stand for the processional. Thank you, and please be seated. I'm Kendra Armour, class of 1993, and president of the Alumni Association. It is my honor to welcome you all to Reunion Weekend 2019. Last year, I celebrated my 25th reunion, and I know how exciting it is to be back on campus with your friends in your old hangouts, seeing the current students, and I hope you're enjoying your time so far and that it's a wonderful weekend. This is my third and final convocation as president of the Alumni Association, and with my term coming to an end next month, I'm excited to be passing the torch to Juanita Nash Dahlen, class of 1972. I feel fortunate to have maintained my connection with Scripps in the years since I've graduated and to have strengthened my ties to our community during my term as president. I continue to be inspired by the way that we all stay connected to, support each other, our community, and the college, and the many ways that you all stay involved and stay connected to give back to Scripps. As we gather here together this morning, I would like to ask for a moment of silence as we remember those we have lost since we last gathered. Thank you. I'm delighted to extend a special welcome to the members of the classes of 1959, 64, and 69 who are joining us for convocation. The rest of us congratulate you on your 50th, 55th, and 60th reunions. We look forward to celebrating our milestone reunions in the years to come. Today, convocation is being streamed on Facebook Live for those alumni who could not join us in person. Glad to have you with us. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the president of Scripps College, Dr. Laura Tiedens, who will give the State of the College address. Laura began her tenure as president of Scripps College in August of 2016. 2 years ago, during reunion weekend, she was inaugurated on Elm Tree Lawn, and she stated during her inaugural address that Scripps' mission remains as relevant today as it was 90 years ago: to educate women to develop their intellects and talents through active participation in a community of scholars, so that as graduates, they may contribute to society through public and private lives of leadership, service, integrity, and creativity. We are so happy she's with us today celebrating Reunion Weekend. Please join me in welcoming President Laura Tiedens to give the State of the College address.
Thank you, Kendra, and welcome to all of you. I want to start by actually picking up on some of the things that Kendra said. First, as we remember our alumni who departed last year, I do want to make mention that it was actually at Reunion Weekend last year that our friend and alumna Heath Stokes Campbell passed away, and so I know I am thinking about her this weekend, as I'm sure many of you are as well. I also want to pick up on what Kendra spoke about our mission. For a women's college that started in 1926, it amazes me every day the way in which this mission resonates today just as much as it did then, and the extent to which it's just as important for our society what we do now as it was then. This is a time at Reunion Weekend when you get to indulge your nostalgia, when you get to think about who you were while you were in college and how that has influenced and shaped who you have become today. Whether you graduated 5 years ago or 55 years ago, our mission is relevant to both classes and even to the students outside. We continue to facilitate and produce students who are confident, courageous, and hopeful, and who, like you, will contribute to solving the world's most pressing problems. We get to see this every year, even in the applicants to the college, and so I wanted to read you a quotation from one of the applications this year. A student from New York who wanted to come all the way to California for college said, "I want to come to Scripps because I want to break the glass ceiling." And I know that's what Scripps College is all about. Now you know, because you know so many of the people in this room and other friends and acquaintances from Scripps College, that our students and alumni are advocates, scholars, and leaders who pursue a wide range of interests and passions, and do so in often very unexpected ways. What I hope to do with you this morning, and I'll try to be brief because we have many exciting things to do this morning, is to give you a sense of some of the ways in which Scripps continues to cultivate the life of the mind, ways in which we work on creativity, and ways in which we develop humane and compassionate leaders for the future. And I'm going to do that by covering 4 areas of the college: academic excellence, vibrant community, institutional strength, and national profile. So let's start with academic excellence, which is truly at the core of our mission. Accomplished students and faculty come here, and then we provide a context where they can thrive as scholars, researchers, learners, and leaders in their fields. And I love this picture, shows a student with her thesis. And so it remains, as it probably was for many of you, a tradition on campus to get a picture taken with your thesis. I can't tell you what a shock this was to my husband in the first year when we were living in Revelle House. And around about this time of year, we kept seeing students appear at our doorstep. They didn't knock on the door, they didn't want to talk to us, but they would pose in front of Revelle and get a picture taken. Sorry. Thank you, Al. There's that student getting a thesis. We bring really exceptional students to campus, and this continues to be true and even more true. This picture here shows two students from the class of 18, and you know, it used to be the case that they told me that I should have someone do the clicking for me, and I refused. And see now, they are so my independence is being tested. Sorry about that. Okay, so these two students, here they really are. They are from the class of 18, and they're working in a Keck Science Lab. And they now both are in a lab at the Keck Graduate Institute working on a palm-sized biosensor to gauge the effects of aging on the human body. This is something I actually don't want to know the results of, but, but I'm sure it's useful. Scripps remains really a preferred destination for liberal arts students, and they come here with an incredible background. They have such a strong profile. If any of you look now at what our applicants are like in terms of their GPA and their test scores and all of the amazing things that they do extracurricularly, what I normally hear from alumni is a concern that now maybe I wouldn't get in as I had in the past. And it is true, our students are exceptional. We bring them here and we try to provide for them an incredibly rigorous, complex, and interdisciplinary curriculum. And we implement this in classrooms, of course, but also in studios and in labs and in the community. And as you know, one of the things that's particularly unique about the Scripps experience is the thesis project and the interdisciplinary core. And these two things act as bookends, right? So all of our students start with the interdisciplinary humanities core, which is a 3-semester-long experience, and they end with a thesis. Both of these things remain very unique in the land of higher education. Very few colleges have a core anymore, and very few have a thesis, and the number of colleges that have both is certainly dwindling. Scripps remains committed to both of these experiences for our students because we believe that they are key ingredients to producing alumni like you, people who are critical thinkers, who can examine the world from multiple perspectives and then do amazing things with the knowledge that they acquire. Our students have amazing experiences in the classroom and also through, oh, I'm sorry. I'm confused by the layout on the screen. That's my problem. So beyond having amazing experiences in the classroom, they do much outside of the classroom as well. And so we have a number of CLORGs, which are, of course, the clubs and organizations that our students join. Some people say we have as many CLORGs as we do have students, and I don't think that's quite true, but it does speak to the exceptional number of leadership opportunities that our students have, as well as their very broad interests. Our students are also artists, and we see this on campus every day and every week in this very room. There are concerts going on all of the time. We also have the Claremont Concert Choir, the Chamber Choir, a concert orchestra, and just 2 weeks ago, I found myself in the annual dance performance. Our students are athletes, and we had an incredible year in athletics last year. So the Athena's tennis won for the first time the NCAA Division III national title. Really exciting. Our cross-country team and our volleyball team won their SIAC championships as well. Our students are also citizens of the world and have civic concerns, and we see this in the way in which they engage in service opportunities. This is illustrated in this picture, where we see two students who are stocking food banks as part of the consortium's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. But we also have students who do internships around civic concerns. So just as an example, we have a student who did an internship with the Organization for World Peace, one who did an internship with the Mexico Solidarity Network, another, Gender Concerns International in Tunisia, and yet another, the Housing Works organization. Our students are not just involved outside the classroom in extracurricular activities, but also get engaged in research. And these research activities are recognized by national and international grants awards and other kinds of awards. So, for example, last year we had 2 students who won the very prestigious Watson Fellowship, another student who won a Davis Project for Peace, and 3 students who won National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowships. We had 9 students who were Fulbright scholars, and we remain, once again, on the 2018-19 list of top Fulbright producing institutions in the country, which is incredible. Yay. We also support our students' research right here while they're at the college, and one of the ways that we do this is through the Johnson Summer Research Grants, and our students often use these grants to start early work on their thesis, and we had 26 students last year who were supported by one of these and did research over the summer through a Johnson Summer Research Award. 5 students did research supported by the LASPA Center for Leadership. Our students go on to do incredible things as well, and this slide gives you a smattering of the kinds of places where our students go off to work. This is just some of them, and the point is to say that they do all kinds of things. So students go to media and technology companies, national and international nonprofits, financial consulting, and legal services and international retailers. Our students also, of course, go on to graduate school. A little over 10% of our students go immediately from Scripps into graduate school, and of those, about 75% are admitted to their first choice institution. And this gives you a sense of some of the incredible institutions they join, including USC, UCLA, Northwestern, the Courtauld. Within 5 years of graduation, a full 2/3 of our students end up going to professional or graduate school, which doesn't surprise me at all given the extent to which our students and alumni are engaged in learning. Now, of course, so much of what we do here is made possible through our amazing and distinguished faculty members. And our faculty, of course, we try to recognize them internally and reward all the great things they do, but they are also recognized and acknowledged through external means as well. We had some incredible achievements amongst our faculty. So, for example, Gretchen Edwards-Gilbert, an associate professor of biology, won a Fulbright this year to study in Poland. Mary McNaughton, who I hope many of you know, she's an alumna from the class of 70 and also professor of art history here at Scripps, won grants from the Pasadena Art Alliance and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Stacy Wood, a professor of psychology, won a very prestigious grant from the Albert and Elaine Borchardt Foundation. Our art faculty do incredible things. They were included in leading national exhibitions, including one at the National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., and at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. That's people who teach art here every day. That's who our students have as faculty. They gave performances and presentations throughout the U.S. and through the world, in New Zealand, in South America, in Europe, in Malaysia. And they did residencies at places like Stanford and in China and in Poland. They provide to our students a robust curriculum. And so they continue to infuse the interdisciplinary core with new ideas. And we're transitioning from a theme and a focus on community for the past 3 years to now a focus on the notion of the truth. And what is the truth? And how does the humanities define and come to understand the truth? Also a really critical theme in today's world where what the truth is being questioned at all times. Our students will have tools to examine that question, to be critical-minded thinkers about everything they read about through the lens of the humanities. We also are always innovating in the curriculum. And 2 big innovations and foci of our innovations this year have focused on computer science and on the interdisciplinary humanities initiatives. In terms of computer science, this is an area where we see more and more student interest. Students of today see that being knowledgeable about computer science is part of being a well-educated person. So we're developing those areas, and we're doing so in what I would say is a prototypical Scripps way, in the sense that as we develop this programming, we are focused on taking an interdisciplinary approach to computer science, as well as being gender inclusive in the way that we teach computer science. The other initiative that we've been focused on, which is funded by the Mellon Grant, is one around the humanities and helping students in the institution make a mark on understanding the way in which the humanities is so relevant for the world that we live in today. In this area, one of the primary things that we're doing is creating what we call interdisciplinary humanities clinic courses. In these courses, our faculty and students will pair with community organizations throughout the greater LA area to address complex community issues and use a humanistic lens, or the humanities, to understand the causes of those issues, as well as come up with creative solutions to the problems society faces. And we've just started to get faculty involved in this project and gotten a huge response from faculty. There's steep competition about who's going to get to teach these classes, which is great. We all know that one of the real hallmarks of Scripps College is the vibrant community that we have here. It's really one of our greatest assets, and so every year we put big effort into maintaining and strengthening our ways of forming community and making sure that our students really feel part of that community and can get the most out of it. We've done that in the past year with a real focus on student wellness and health, and we've been very helped here by the JED Foundation. We also revamped our new student orientation with the idea that instead of throwing tons and tons and tons of facts at students who are undergoing this huge change in their lives, to instead focus that time on building relationships and creating community. Finally, we've been trying to look critically at our residence halls, which I think we all see as one of the great strengths of the institution, but using that strength even more to our advantage to think about how the residence halls can be truly places of gathering and community building. And we work closely with the students on this by having them become a subset of them, something that we're calling community coordinators, where they engage in sort of produce and facilitate spontaneous social events for the students, finding ways to help them build relationships with each other early on. Leadership and career development continues to be an important aspect of Scripps College. This is one of the things that we exist for. And we do this both through our Career Planning and Resources Office, as well as the LASPA Center for Leadership. One thing that we've tried to do over the last several years is really build the number of internship opportunities available for students. And this year, our Career Planning and Resources Office will be offering somewhere between 70 and 90 internship grants to students. This is really dependent on funding and made possible through alumni like you. The internship grants allow students to take an internship over the summer instead of a paid job, and that in that way give them professional experience, allow them to build their resume, and help them determine what careers really make sense for them. We've had students last summer, some of the examples of what students did. There was a student who did an internship at the Architecture and Design Museum, another one at the International Environmental Law Center, another at the Feminist Majority Foundation. So students use these to explore important topics to figure out how they themselves will contribute to this world that they will be entering. About 3 years ago, we started doing regional treks as part of our career exploration efforts. And we have done 12 career exploration treks over the last 3.5 years. In these treks, our students have visited over 67 unique organizations in 6 different cities. And this was made possible through 77 alumni hosts. 126 students have participated in these treks, and more than half of them receive financial aid to do so. And just this last year, there was a trek to Sacramento, and this focused on government and public affairs. There was a trek to the Bay Area that focused on the technology industry, and a trek to Seattle that focused on STEM fields. The LASPA Center is also working with our students on leadership skills and development. We instituted the Student Leadership Institute, which brings back student leaders, of which, as we discussed, there are many. They come back early now to school and get a deep infusion of leadership skills with the idea that they'll use those leadership skills in their leadership positions right here while they're at Scripps, get some good practice using them, and have really developed them by the time they leave Scripps and go on to do their next thing. The LASPA Center also continues to give We Act grants. These support self-designed projects. And finally, this year, the LASPA Center launched a book club that I hope there are many of you who participated in. It was oriented toward alumni, faculty, and staff, and started with a discussion of Brené Brown's Dare to Lead. This summer, we're going to be doing a pilot program, which is a 4-day women's executive leadership program on campus in June. The focus is on early career professionals, so people who finished college maybe 3 to 7 years ago. Those of you here for your 5-year reunion, I hope you will check it out. But the idea is to explore transformational leadership and the opportunities and challenges associated with women's leadership. Diversity and inclusion is one of our values, and we work hard on trying to create a more inclusive environment where all of our students, staff, and faculty thrive. Much of the work that we do in this area, we do under the umbrella of the IDEA initiative, and IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. The IDEA initiative studies the campus through a working group and tries to find places on campus where we're not living up to our goals and expectations around diversity and inclusion, and looks for ways to fix those sort of policies and practices throughout the college. The IDEA initiative also runs a number of workshops to help the community face, confront, process differences in diversity and produce inclusion better. Some of the workshops that we offered this year were on connecting community across differences and on community building. At all times, we're always thinking about how to keep this institution strong and how to strengthen it further. And there are many different pieces of this, but much of it really starts with our alumni. We value our relationships with you, and we continue to work on strengthening those bonds and making there be more ways that you can connect with us. One of the primary ways we do this is through our regional events. This past year, we sort of had an umbrella view of our events that was called Behind the Scenes. I hope many of you were able to do some of the behind-the-scenes events this year, because they were fantastic and responded to incredibly well. Each of these events was at a museum, and they were hosted by someone from the Scripps community who had a special relationship at that museum, usually someone like a senior curator. So the photo that you see here is from the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco, where our group got a behind-the-scenes tour of their exhibit on contemporary Muslim fashions. And this was led by the exhibition curator, Jill D'Alessandro, who just also happens to be a Scripps alum. It was great to see the turnout for these events, but it was also so meaningful to me, and I think so telling of the college, that at so many of the really greatest museums across the country, there's a Scripps alumna who is there, who is leading the way on the programming at that museum. And for a little place like us, that tells you a lot about the immense impact that we've had in the world of arts. We did 6 of these events, and we had such a great time at all of them. We will continue to do a similar series next year, and I hope those of you who are not able to make it this year will join us next year. Our alumni are involved in many other ways too. So this year, for example, alumni conducted 339 admissions interviews, playing a central role in bringing the next generation of Scripps students here. We also relaunched our regional program for alumni. We're developing an alum-to-alum mentoring program to create cross-generational connections around the country. We're partnering with CP&R, that's our Career Center, and the Laspa Leadership Center for the virtual book club that I talked to you about. And Camp Scripps, I know there are some campers here. Woohoo, Camp Scripps! Largest attendance ever last year, with 140 alumni coming to Camp Scripps last year. Pretty soon you're going to have filled all of the residence halls. One of the ways that we achieve institutional strength is, of course, through fiscal strength, and I want to assure you that we are in a strong fiscal condition. That doesn't mean you should stop giving, but just know we are here to stay. We are helped immensely in this through the campaign that we just closed. We closed our campaign in December when we had reached and surpassed our goal, and we came in with $179 million toward the future of Scripps College. Just as exciting to me as that number, which does constitute the largest campaign in our history, was this fact that 74% of our alumni participated in that campaign. That's an incredible rate of participation, so thank you. This campaign allows us to achieve our goals, to become even stronger on so many different fronts: in academic excellence, in terms of the campus, the fund, all of the things that we need to continue to better ourselves. Now, of course, we still continue to grow, and we have some new initiatives and some new areas of growth coming our way. And excuse me just a moment. Sorry, I thought I was about to sneeze into the microphone. Some of you may have heard we've got 2 building planning projects well underway. One of them is we will be physically expanding the Keck Science Center. And so in 2020, we hope that we will be breaking ground over in the Ravel parking lot to add on to that science building so that we can meet the needs of our science students. We also will be building a new dance building. Yay! This is something that many of you know we have needed to do for decades, and are thrilled that we plan to start this project also in 2020. The new dance building will be located over by the Garrison Performing Arts Center, and part of what we're really excited about this possibility for is it really means that that area will become an arts corridor for the campus. We'll have all of the arts co-located with one another, and we expect to see that creating some really fantastic interdisciplinary arts experiences. And the new dance building is being designed to help facilitate exactly that. So I hope that you will be coming back to campus to visit those projects as they get underway. Our institution is also strengthened by our national profile, and so we have been thinking a lot about who knows us, how do they know about us, and what do they know about us. And what we have found is that we are growing in our reputation at all times. This year, we were really helped by the Scripps Student Store, who went online, and so now there's no excuse. You can buy your Scripps swag any day, anytime, and be wearing it all over the country. We, of course, also look at our rankings, and the short story here is that our rankings continue to show us that our reputation grows, that we are known as an elite and prestigious liberal arts college that focuses on academic excellence and access. We've also grown our reputation through our Scripps Presents series, which is our public event series and is known for being the very best in the Claremont colleges. This last year, we started Facebook live streaming Scripps Presents. So if you can't make it to campus, for the amazing authors and creative influencers who we bring to campus, I encourage you to tune in to Facebook Live, and you can see on the slide that a lot of people did exactly that for some of our speakers. I want to close today by just talking about the Scripps woman. In the last year, we put into effect a new strategic plan. And there's nothing like a strategic plan to get you focused on thinking about where does the college need to be, where is it going, and what do we want to be when we reach 100, which is really right around the corner. In my own mind, we want to keep doing a lot of what we are doing and move beyond what we're doing to do it even better. And I'm guided in that by the stories of our alumni who do such amazing things. And I want to tell you the story of just one of our alums who I think exemplifies what so many of you do. So this is Helen Yenser. She's from the class of 2017. And as I say, she's just one example. As a high school student, she became interested in global women's health issues. And she was so moved by stories of women and girls around the world who didn't have access to feminine hygiene products because of cultural stigmas around menstruation. So she and her classmates, while in high school, created something called the PAD Project, which is a nonprofit that brings machines that produce menstrual pads to rural villages in India. Then she came to Scripps, she focused on her studies, she was an English major, but all the while, she was expanding the locations in which they operated. She set up a Kickstarter campaign, and that Kickstarter campaign, among other things, funded the creation of a documentary that is now called Period, End of Sentence, for which she was the executive producer. Some of you know already that just a few months ago in Los Angeles, that documentary received an Academy Award. Yay, Helen. Helen exemplifies the curiosity, the passion, and the ability to make people's lives better. And that is what I have come to associate with all of you and with the college itself. Incipit Vita Nova.
Thank you, Laura, for providing us with that comprehensive and exciting overview. It has been a busy year. Now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce this year's Alumni Award recipients. We begin with Volunteer of the Year. This award was established in 2005 and recognizes exceptional volunteer service in support of Scripps to promote alumni connections and advance the goals and mission of the college. Past recipients have included some people here in the room today: Sue Talbot, 69, Margaret Rose Hancock, 69, Marilee Stewart Howard, 70, Diana Ho, 71, Maria Stella Quara, 89, and Brooke Tomlin, 92, just to name a few. This year's recipient has served Scripps College as a volunteer for well more than a decade. She's been a member of the Alumni Leadership Council for 10 years and served as a trustee for 5 years. She has served as chair of the Lois Langland Alumna in Residence Program. She's currently serving as a Camp Scripps Tri-Chair for the second time. And she is serving as a reunion volunteer as she is celebrating her 25th reunion this year. Please join me in congratulating Devani Donez as our 2019 Volunteer of the Year.
Thank you, Kendra, and my cheer squad. It's a tremendous honor to receive this award from the Alumni Association, but it's made all the more special by being presented this award from my dear friend Kendra, so thank you again. I'd like to start by thanking and acknowledging a number of special people here with me today, most especially my family. My husband Francisco, my son Patrick, my daughter Kate. The ability to volunteer as much as I have done was only possible because they sacrificed some of their time with me over the years. Maybe it wasn't so much a sacrifice for my kids, but I think Francisco missed me when I was gone. I don't know for sure. I truly appreciate their support of me and the volunteer work that has been so important and meaningful in my life. I also have my Scripps family legacy in the house. My cousin Melissa Hernandez in the class of '89, celebrating her 30th. And my sister, Carrie Capiello, class of '98. Sharing Scripps with these women in my family, it's just really cool. I don't know what else to say beyond that. But each of us, all three of us have a daughter, and so who knows, perhaps the Scripps family tradition will continue. So Jess Butler in the alumni office told me that the award winners could bring a little posse with them. So I showed up with a very special crew, one of whom flew in from Seattle to be here, by the way, so that means a lot to me. Maggie Latimer, class of '82. Emily Rankin, class of '97. And my honorary daughter, Tori Sapand, class of 2015. I love you all so much, and I'm so grateful for your friendship and Scripps sisterhood. I thank you for being in my cheering squad today and every day. And to my gorgeous, talented, and fabulous classmates in the class of 1994, 25 years really hasn't changed us all that much. We still look good. We still got it. I love each of you crazy individuals, and I thank you for making my life a heck of a lot more fun. So now I'd like to use a little of my time here today to acknowledge some folks who aren't here in Balch Auditorium. I know I have some special friends watching on Facebook Live, so hi Libby, hi Adrian. But I'm really talking about other alumni who are missing this occasion for plenty of their own reasons, I'm sure. Most of us probably have a friend or two that we cajoled, maybe even begged to please come to reunion with us, but to no avail. I'm sure we have classmates here today who haven't stepped foot on campus since they graduated. I think it's okay to acknowledge that not everyone has only fond memories of their time at Scripps, or to acknowledge those who don't always feel at home here or as connected in the ways some others do. It is these classmates from whom I'm asked the most often, why are you so involved at Scripps? Why do you give Scripps so much of your time? Don't you remember when that classmate thought you were a dining hall worker and not a peer? Don't you remember being locked in the res halls after the Rodney King verdict? Don't you remember us calling you, for free, in Belfast, where I was studying abroad from inside our occupation of Alexander Hall after another faculty of color was denied tenure? Don't you remember when Wanawaki's office was a closet in Frankel? And on and on. So, as a proud Scripps history major, I was trained to be a rigorous and critical thinker by the great Rita Roberts, Julie Liss, Brad Blaine. Yay, Bradley. They taught me that a historian must be even-handed in her treatment of evidence. And if I were to write a narrative of my 25-plus year history with Scripps College, it would be wrong to cherry-pick only the negative experiences or only the positive ones. Trust me, I've had plenty of both. So why do I volunteer at Scripps? And better yet, why should you? When I started teaching history myself as a second career, one of my students asked me early on, Mrs. Doñez, why is it called his story and not her story? Well, damn, I'd never thought of that before. That left me kind of with my mouth hanging open that year. And I've thought a lot about that since. I volunteer at Scripps because I believe it is vital that all of our students and alumni are seen, are heard, are known in the her story of Scripps College. Without volunteering at Scripps, I wouldn't have met my friend, the great Ann Westaway, badass class of 1969, celebrating their 50th. She brought me a tiara today and a Wonder Woman bracelet. That's a good friend. That's a good friend. Without volunteering, I would not have met Anne. And while floating in the pool at Camp Scripps one summer, Anne schooled me in a little bit of the queer herstory of Scripps in the 60s. It blew my mind. I think she really ought to write a book. Anne. Without volunteering at Scripps, I wouldn't have learned from my board colleagues, and there happened to be quite a few from the class of '72, also a very vintage year for a lot of us. We're born that year. I wouldn't have learned from them that theirs is the only class in the history of Scripps College, or the her story of Scripps College, that didn't sign graffiti wall. And when I asked why, why not? And they pretty much told me when the world was imploding at war, signing the wall was just too conventional for them. And I think that tells you a lot about the priorities of a Scrippsie, too. Without volunteering at Scripps, I wouldn't have known Tatisa Zunguze, class of 2018, who tragically took her own life in the spring of 2017. She too has an important place in the herstory of Scripps by driving attention and urgency towards the most challenging issues our most marginalized students face. I volunteer for Scripps, and so should you, because the multi-generational friendships we forge here will enrich your lives in ways you cannot yet imagine. We have so much to learn from and share with one another. It's often assumed that alumni are resistant to change, that we want Scripps to always be the place it was and the way it looked when we were students. I volunteer for Scripps not because I want Scripps to be the same, but because I want it to be different. Perhaps I need it to be different. I want it to be an even better experience for the students of today and tomorrow. And I know it can be, but it will take all of us and the unique perspectives and gifts we can offer to help make it so. I volunteer at Scripps because I believe in the mantra of giving your time, talent, and treasure to the things you care about. When my daughter Kate was about 8 or 9, I took her to the Birch Aquarium in La Jolla. And as we were walking in, she saw the flags that said Scripps Institute flying, and she said, "Mommy, is this where you're always going?" And now, I had to set her straight on that because we're Scripsies and we don't study fish. But it made me consider, how much time I do spend at Scripps and the impression that made on my kids. So when my family moved to Claremont in 2008, I quickly realized that living so close to campus and to some crust was both a blessing and a curse. It was all too easy because you're just close by to get sucked into the volunteering vortex and the mocha cookies by living here. But you don't have to live nearby to share your time with Scripps. You can spend 20, 30 minutes writing note cards to some graduating seniors, welcoming them to our Alumni Association. You can interview Scripps applicants, and a lot of you did, apparently. You can attend Scripps regional events, book clubs, or come for 3 days at Camp Scripps. You can spend time today at the Alumni Student Diversity Mixer. It's important for our students to see us, to know us, and for us to listen and learn from them. Okay, give our time. Fine, but talent. Many of us, myself included, aren't always confident about having specific talents to share. One thing I've learned is that we just have to show up, be ourselves, and that in itself is the gift. We know that nothing good can happen when women, and women of color especially, aren't at the table or in the room. As difficult as some of my Scripps volunteer experiences have been, I know I have life experience that many others don't, and sharing that experience may not technically be a talent, but I hope it provided perspective and inspired change. We need your unique experiences too, our students really do. If you're part of the disability community or the LGBTQ community, if you're a person of color or an international alum, if you're a parent or caring for your own parents, if you're politically active or working in tech or entertainment, there are actually many ways to connect you to students and alumni with those commonalities, both virtually and in real life. Share your personal or professional expertise with your fellow alumni at Camp Scripps or at a LASPA Center student program. We're an incredibly talented bunch, and we can continue to create space for us to contribute in ways that are meaningful to us and to others. Time, talent, and treasure. I know the common refrain, I'm sure some of it has said it at least once or twice. The only time I hear from Scripps is when they ask me for money. Number one, I know that's not quite true. That's not true. And number two, I know how much it costs to provide the student experience I want us to provide, and to make it possible for some women to even attend Scripps in the first place. The Board of Trustees did an admissions exercise a few years ago where we broke into small groups and we were given the same real applicant files to consider, with the names removed, of course. Who would we admit, deny, or waitlist? My group was so proud to present our choices, as were the other trustee groups. It turned out that not a single one of those amazing applicants was admitted to Scripps. All of them required too much financial aid. It was a painful eye-opener for all of us as trustees, for sure. Now, I was lucky enough to be working in Washington when Emily's List was really hitting their stride in the early 90s. If you remember, Emily's List was a nonprofit formed to raise funds for pro-choice Democratic women running. So Emily stands for Early Money is Like Yeast. It makes the dough rise. Their tactic of bundling small donations from around the country into larger ones was a game changer for women running for office. And the same is true for Scripps. If you're not in a position to make a large gift to the college and you think your $10, $20, $50 doesn't make a difference, you are dead wrong. Our dollars have power collectively, and we wouldn't have a Scripps fund without it. But if you are in a position to make a big gift, I know some people you can talk to. I may not yet have a ton of spare funds to share with my kids in school, but I make Scripps a giving priority, and I direct my gifts to areas that have the most meaning for me. Scholarships, mental health services, student clubs and organizations. Stake your claim to an area that has meaning for you and direct your gift of any size there. It's easy to do. It's not hard, and I understand even for those folks out only maybe 5 years, your $5, your $10 means a lot, but it really makes a difference. It really does. We have the ideas. I think President Teeden's laid out quite a few of them. We have the vision for the Scripps we want to be in our 100th year and beyond, but it will take all of us doing our part to get there. So why? Why do I volunteer at Scripps, and why should you? Ultimately, and without a shadow of a doubt, aside from my family, the most meaningful relationships of my life have come from this place. My first job, thanks Nancy Bekovac. My wedding was here. My dearest friends, all Scripps. It's crazy, I really don't know anyone who has the connection to their alma mater like we do. And I know that can be frustrating at times for the staff, but just know that being critical is not the same as being negative. Being critical surveyors of the world is simply what our Scripps education trained us to be. I hope each of you will join me in finding ways, both large and small, to honor your connection to Scripps by sharing your time, your talent, and your treasure well into the next 100 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Devaney. The Outstanding Recent Alumna Award was established in 1992 to honor an alumna in the early stages of her life's work. She must use her Scripps education in the quest for personal excellence with a demonstrated willingness to seek out challenges and take risks, all the while maintaining her loyalty and connection to the Scripps community. Past recipients have included a couple of alumnae you may have heard of before. Human rights activist Karen Say, 86, was named Outstanding Recent Alumna in 1998, and former United States Representative Gabrielle Giffords, 93, was named in 2004. In her first year as a Scripps student, this year's recipient co-founded the original chapter of Challah for Hunger. Since then, Challah for Hunger has grown into a well-known and highly regarded nonprofit organization with a network of 100 chapters across the United States, Canada, and Australia. You may even have seen current students selling challah in Seal Court yesterday, as they do every Friday of the academic year. In 2013, she opened Craft, a walk-in art studio for adults in her hometown of Austin, Texas. Quote, a place where anyone, from crafting hoarders to rookies, could make a mess and create, Craft has become Austin's hub for DIY crafting, workshops, and events. We're honored to have her join us today. Congratulations to Ellie Winkleman, class of 2007, our outstanding recent alumna.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be in a room with all of you, let alone to receive this award. Scripps is my favorite place in the world. And I want to just tell you a little about how I started Challah for Hunger, which was accidentally. When I first arrived here, I didn't know what to do with myself, but I liked baking, and I just started baking challah bread, which is a traditional Jewish bread for Shabbat on Friday nights. And sometimes I used the McAllister kitchen, and sometimes I used the dorm kitchen in Browning. And classmates showed up to learn how to make challah from me, and then they came back week after week complaining that their friends were eating all of their challah. So I saw that there's demand for this product, the delicious bread, and there's also demand for the experience of coming together and baking the bread, and I decided to try to leverage both of those things for philanthropy. And we went to the dining hall, Malat, and asked if we could come in, a group of students, every week and bake challah, which, as a more experienced adult, is a crazy request to make for a kitchen that serves 1,000 meals a day, probably more now, of course. But I didn't know better at that point, so we went, and someone was crazy enough to say yes. And then we went to so we had a means of production, and we went to the Motley and asked if we could sell challah there, and they said no, which was, it turned out, very key, because that rejection then forced us to find our own sales channel, which became the sales table in Seal Court, which quickly became a central part of Challah for Hunger, because that was the opportunity to educate people about why we were doing it. And we actually turned that in not just an educational opportunity, but also an opportunity for people to engage in advocacy. And we actually offered a discount on the bread if people would write a letter or make a phone call to an elected official. And from behavioral science, we know that once someone does something once, they're more likely to do it again. So it was a way to really engage people in citizenship. So after I graduated from Scripps, I kept working on Challah for Hunger. And sometimes I didn't know what to do. And one of those times I called CP&R, the Career Planning and Resources, I think I got that, okay, thank you, office, and they referred me to a few people, including, we've already heard her name today, but Diana Ho, who is sitting in the back, and she became an incredible mentor for me, not just with Challah for Hunger, but she helped me get into crafting. So she actually ended up joining the board of directors of Challah for Hunger and became the chair, and I just feel so lucky that when I didn't know what to do, I called Scripps, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And they were like, we have someone for you. And that was amazing. And as part of working for Challah for Hunger, I did a lot of traveling. I was traveling around to visit chapters as kind of a consultant, and I also was asked to do a lot of speaking, but I haven't done it in a while, so it's fun to be here with you. So I was traveling so much that I actually even ended up earning platinum status on one of the airlines one year. That's how much I was traveling. And one trip that I took that bumped my mileage up was to Paris for a fellowship gathering that I was in. My best friend Travis and I flew there to Europe together, and we traveled for a week. And then he came home, and I went to my fellowship gathering. And I was going straight from there to another fellowship meeting in Berkeley. And I flew on an airplane across the ocean, and when I landed, I had 1 million missed calls from my family and texts basically declaring an emergency, and they were from everyone but my mom. And I was in a panic because I had a connecting flight to get to, and I was rushing, and also a panic because there was an emergency happening in my life. And I was like running through the airport, but also trying to reach my family, and I couldn't. But finally, my dear sister and I connected on the phone, and I was on a tram, one of the airport trams, when my sister told me that Gabby had been shot. And I kind of collapsed on the tram, and people walked around me. And I don't remember how, but I eventually got to a gate, and it was packed, and all the TVs were showing coverage of the shooting in Tucson. And it was a very weird experience because it was really personal to me, and I'll tell you how. But I was in a room very full of strangers watching public coverage of this catastrophe and experiencing it, and I was like, I don't know if I should go to this retreat I'm supposed to go to in Berkeley, or if I should go be with my family and in Austin. And my family told me there's nothing you can do for Gabby except you know that she would want you to go to Berkeley and learn how to make challah for Hunger Stronger. That's why you're in that fellowship, and she would want that. And they were right, obviously, about that I couldn't do anything for Gabby. And I know that because I went to DC and skipped my January of my senior year here to help her set up her office in DC when she was first elected. And then she made me come back. She was like, you need to go do the work that you're doing and go finish it. You can't stay here, leave. So I know that she encouraged me to work on the work. And my dad and Gabby actually became friends. They met a few years after I graduated and at a political event, and Scripps College came up, and they connected over that, and then became such good friends that we are, I made the challah for her wedding. So it was a very personal tragedy that I was going through, but with that knowledge that Gabby would want me to go to this retreat, I went, and I tried to focus and be present, and it was impossible because it was crazy. And I didn't feel like the people I was in the fellowship with were being supportive of me. And then I was like putting out these weird things on Facebook, like about how distressed I was, and someone from Scripps showed up at the venue that the retreat was at and sat with me until I could make the decision to leave the retreat early, which I did. And I actually haven't talked to Hadra in a few years, but after I wrote that down, I messaged her, and I know that she would do the same thing today. And I would do it for her in an instant of just like dropping everything and going to be with someone from Scripps who needs you. And I have another sad travel story, which is that Travis, that best friend I went to Europe with, 2 years later, 2 years after Gabby was shot, and 2 years after we went to Europe together, Travis and I were dating, and he went on a last-minute trip to New York. And on his layover there, he called me and was like, hey, I actually don't want to go. I'm thinking about coming home. And I told him, go and enjoy your weekend, have a good time, and then come back and I'll pick you up at the airport. But he died and never came home, so I didn't get to pick him up. And obviously, I went from being platinum and traveling a lot to not traveling at all because these bad things happened in airports. You know, there's a before being in the airport, and there's an after, and I don't want to do it. So I don't travel anymore, and that is to explain why I have been having a lot of anxiety about coming here, and which my dad can tell you because I've been driving him crazy. He also happens to be here today, and my mom. I told you in that story that I didn't hear from my mom when I heard from everyone else. It clearly was about Gabby and not my mom, and both my parents are here, and I'm really lucky. But I have been driving my dad crazy about how anxious and miserable I was to have to travel to come here. Of course, I know that anticipation is often way more than the thing. And now that I'm here, I am so grateful to be here with all of you and at Scripps. This is such a beautiful place. But I've been kind of a wreck about it. I also have some discomfort with this honor, which I am very honored by, but I know that everything that is being recognized, that everything that I've accomplished has been dependent on the foundation of privilege on which I built. I know that I've done the building, but there was so much that I had access to that empowered me to do that. The fact that I didn't have to have a job while I was a student here, and that meant that I could take the time to start Hollow for Hunger, and that after graduating, I didn't have the burden of student loans weighing me down, which meant that I could continue working on Hollow for Hunger, even though there was not a lot of money in it. And the fact that after Travis died, my rock bottom, which was miserable, was the bedroom in my childhood, or the bed where I spent 2 months in my childhood bedroom, and not the streets, which is where I very could have easily ended up, given the state that I was in after losing him. So I have this privilege and this safety net, and when I was strong enough after those 2 months of grief, that safety net empowered me to take another risk and start craft, which, as you heard, is a walk-in art studio for grown-ups, and painting was like the only thing I wanted to do after Travis died, so I just went for that. But it was all these other things that gave me the ability to do what I wanted. And I am proud of what I've built there. Yesterday, I was at a table with 5 of our regular crafters and women, 5 women, and they told me, "You deserve this, Ellie. I love craft. It's made my life better. My blood pressure goes down when I'm on my way here." And one of them also told me, "Tell them that last week you had the Homeless Period Project here packing period packs for people who don't have easy access to menstrual supplies. Tell them that you did that for free. That's what you do with your privilege." And I am really proud of that and grateful that I'm able to do that. But I also have the feeling that, of course, what I've done so far isn't enough. And I'm sure that everyone who receives an award like this has that feeling of insufficiency, that I should have and could have and should do more. And all of this was in my head yesterday as I was getting ready to come here. And on top of that, we had some people were coming to the studio who are influencers on social media, people with like hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was like in chaos trying to get to the airport, but I was also trying to get the studio ready. And I was like dreading accepting this award that I didn't feel worthy of, and also dreading getting on an airplane, and like so much. And then I pulled on an extension cord, and there was literally a pop and a flash above my head, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And all the power in the studio went out, and I was like, "This is fucked. Excuse me, I cannot. I just needed to go sit under this table." And when I'm going down that whirlpool of mental chaos and doubt, it's tough to fight back, and I have to slow down and calm down. And when I do that enough that it's finally quiet, I can hear a voice that is speaking calmly and strongly, and she says, confidently, courageously, and hopefully, "Thank you."
Thank you, Ellie. We are so glad you are here with us today. First presented in 1978, the Scripps College Distinguished Alumna Award was established to recognize notable achievements of Scripps alumni and to focus attention on Scripps's role in the education of women. Recipients have made distinguished contributions in their chosen fields and have continued to grow throughout their careers. Some past recipients who happen to be celebrating a milestone reunion this year include Connie Butler, 84, Margot Leonetti O'Connell, 64, Gay Burpee, 69, Dr. Kathleen Brogan-Schwartz, 64, Maxine Boroske Youngay, 59, Barbara Cook-Wormser, 59, and Jean Bixby Smith, 59. This year's recipient is a nationally recognized U.S. military historian and published author, public speaker, philanthropist, and community volunteer. She came to Scripps in 1962 to study art, but soon discovered her true passion, history, and particularly naval history. In the professional history field, a field dominated by men, she persevered to achieve great recognition and success. She's currently working on biographies of early Scripps trustee Margaret Fowler and of Anne Slocum, an Army nurse who served in England, France, and Germany during World War II, and who is the mother of Ellen Risman Wong, 79, celebrating her 40th reunion this weekend. Our honoree's daughter, Brooke, is a member of the class of 1992 and last year's Volunteer of the Year award recipient. And her granddaughter, Grace, is finishing her first year here at Scripps as a member of the class of 2022. Please join me in congratulating Barbara Brooks Tomlin, class of 1966, as our 2019 Distinguished Alumna.
Wow. I don't feel distinguished after all of this, fellow award winners. And I was thinking that, to me, all Scripps graduates are distinguished. Absolutely. The last time I was on this stage was at Scripps Camp, doing my one and only performance of Lady Gaga, which I will not inflict upon you again. Thank you for the piano being here. And anyway, my experience at receiving an award like this is very limited, if non-existent, until today. So when I was thinking about my remarks and reflecting that as a naval and military historian and a diaconal minister in the Methodist Church, that perhaps I should offer a lecture on the Battle of Midway or a sermon on the gospel reading for tomorrow. However, I thought, no, that doesn't sound right. What it did occur to me was something that happened at Scripps as my senior year as an undergraduate. I was over on Elm Tree Lawn one day, and this was a few months before graduation, when I was beginning to realize that, yes, indeed, unless I flunked a course and could come up with another semester, I was going to have to graduate and leave the place I loved so much. And I saw a bevy of ladies walking along Elm Tree Lawn and thought, who are they? They were well-coiffed, beautifully dressed. They were wearing, remember heels? And skirts and dresses. They looked very, impressive. I thought, who are these ladies? And then it occurred to me, they're alumna. And they've come to reminisce and look at the camellias and remember their days as undergraduates at Scripps. Now, in my just turned 22-year-old mind, alumna, I didn't have a very complimentary view of alumna. They, to me, were married, middle-class or upper-middle-class housewives, and possibly had chosen one of the only 3 vocations open to women at the time. They might have been secretaries, teachers, or nurses. So I vowed that moment that I would never be an alumna. Gotta go. Well, you know what happens. You end up an alumna. Anyway, as Kendra said, I came to Scripps College from Cincinnati, Ohio in 1962 in the fall. We were just talking about the fact there was a lot of smog. I'd never seen smog before growing up in Ohio. I had every intention of becoming an art major. My father had taken up watercolors as a vocation, a hobby. He was very good at it. So he knew about the Scripps art department. He knew about the California artists. He knew about Milford Zorns. So he was the one who suggested, rather than go to one of those Eastern women's colleges, which I had applied to, why don't you come to Scripps? Never been to California in my life. We came out. It rained every day I was here in February, but I fell in love. It was love at first sight. And I said, I'm going to Scripps. And what I realized thinking about the remarks today and about being an alumni is that my love of history, my love of art, even though I did not become an art major, has remained with me and been so helpful and informative, going to art shows, to museums, to traveling, and especially to the many historic places that we have been. I think particularly of Rome, of Florence, Athens, of the Parthenon, Paris, all the places that we studied in our humanities course, our 3-year course here. I think we met here in Bulge. And how wonderful that had been to look back and to know so much about it and continue to try and learn more. My plans to study art at Scripps fell quickly by the wayside after my first year of humanities, which was wonderful. And then I took a history seminar in European history. I think it was probably about the French Revolution, Professor Neil Brogden. And I fell in love with history, and specifically European history and culture, and it became my major at Scripps. My vocation as historian, in other words, started at Scripps. When, alas, I had to graduate, yes, I had to graduate, 1966, I had to go out into what we referred to, and maybe they still do, as the real world. And that means you had to find a job. So I applied. We were married Fred Tomlin, Harvey Mudd, class of 63, and we had moved to Goleta, and I needed to get a job. So I went around Santa Barbara area, and of course, the only questions, they didn't want to know about my wonderful Scripps education. They wanted to know, could you do stenography? Can you type? And as all of you know from my emails, I still can't type. Bad. But I went up to the Riviera to a place called Historical Abstracts. And they said, oh, you were a history major? Wonderful. You can come here and be a secretary. One of the 3 vocations open to me. So I became a dreaded real-life secretary. However, it was a turning point in my life because they, when I was bored doing what I would do, I would go back in the room where they had a collection of the United States Naval Institute proceedings. And I'm looking through all of this and thinking, wow, this is really cool. This is naval history and what's going on in the Navy. I love this. And then I read about a lecture that was being given at Santa Barbara City College by the U.S. Navy's Director of Naval History, Ernest Eller. And I decided I would go. And I have to tell the story because I'm standing in a long line of veterans, all probably about my age now. And they would shake his hand and say, you remember me? I was on the Independence. I was on the battleship Iowa with you, blah, blah, blah. And I got up at, barely 22 and went, hi, I'm Barbara Tomlin, and I haven't done anything. And he looked at me and he said, yet. It changed my life. Wait a minute. Okay. So when Fred finished his doctorate at UCSB in physics, we moved to Washington, D.C. area, and one of my first trips was downtown to meet Dr. Eller and say, remember me, the redhead? And he went, yeah. I said, I want to write a book about Allied amphibious operations in the Mediterranean, and I guess I should talk to you. And he said, that's fabulous. Go down to the Washington Navy Yard and get started. And I did. And I have no idea now why I wanted to do that particular topic, but it intrigued me. It was my first full-length study, first book. And given, it turns out, the lack of interest in history following the Vietnam War, nobody really wanted to publish books in military or naval history. It was not published for another 36 years. And I was also thinking today, my first book that actually did get published was G.I. Nightingales, about the Army Nurse Corps in World War II. And one of the connections that I had in that story, of course, was that my daughter Brooke said, after all the years of having books turned down, you know, women's history is really important now. Why don't you go back and try and get something published out of the book that you were working on? And I did. And I think it was Fred who called, and I was staying with Sally Meltzer-Monastieri, who's here today, at her home in Upland, and Fred called and said, the Kentucky Press just called and they want to publish your book. Getting your first book published, I don't know about the rest of you, really hard. So it was very exciting, and that I was with Sally in Upland at the time. Sally had been my roommate in Kimberly. The question is, why did I choose naval history? And the answer is, in my senior year, I heard about a class given by Professor John Haskell Kimball at Pomona. It was called the History of Modern Maritime and Naval History. Most of us referred to it as ships and boats. Wonderful course, just fascinating. And we had to do a senior project. We've been learning about all these exciting senior, well, it wasn't stem cell research that I did. I said, I'm going to create a diorama of the Battle of Midway. So I got styrofoam and I cut out Japanese ships and US Navy ships, and I painted them gray, and I cut them out of styrofoam, and I did it, I guess because we were living at Pitzer, Lori Steer and I, as the seniors at Pitzer, was an overflow group of students from Scripps. I didn't want to mess up the room, I guess, and so I did it in Ais Van Wyck's room in Browning Hall. Don't ever try cutting boats out of styrofoam, it's very hard. But anyway, later, when I decided to go to Rutgers University to pursue a PhD in history, I went to Rutgers because they had a professor of military history. And I was thinking shades of Dr. Kimball at Pomona. He wasn't, unfortunately, a naval historian, but he was a military historian. Anyway, when I look back at my time at Rutgers, I was so well prepared, I think, for graduate school in a way because of my years at Scripps, even though I was in my 40s by the time I went to graduate school. But I also realized that when it comes to writing a doctorate and doing the research, what I learned here about being a disciplined researcher and being able to write and being able to think critically was so incredibly important. I do not think I possibly could have done that if I had not gone to Scripps. And write 5 books. The 5th one just came out. My love of learning, I think, carried me through the 1980s when I realized a call to ministry, and I decided to enroll at the Drew Theological School in Madison, New Jersey. It's a Methodist institution. And I soon found there's a lot of weird theo talk that goes on in those places, but when it came to the history of Christianity, this was a breeze, because we'd studied the history of Christianity and the story of Jesus of Nazareth and the early church, and reading books by like Understanding the New Testament, Understanding the Old Testament. We'd read it here, and this was so incredibly easy for me. The other thing that I think was a real insight to me when I think about my connections to Scripps is the real important part of my spiritual journey that happened in Margaret Fowler Garden. Margaret Fowler Garden was a place that deepened, I think, my spiritual journey with prayer and meditation, both as an undergraduate and as an alumna. The Margaret Fowler Garden, I think, is a very wonderful and peaceful place. I even wrote a paper when I was in seminary about the beauty, the peacefulness, and the spirituality of the garden and the chapel. And of course, it's a special memory, too, for our family, because that's where our daughter Brooke married James Marca, in the garden at Margaret Fowler. And of course, hopefully, Grace will be enjoying Margaret Fowler here as a freshman and the rest of her years at Scripps. I think the MFG, as we call it, is a very sacred place. And I did not realize when I was here, I thought Margaret Fowler knew that they'd named the garden for her. She didn't. It was named posthumously by her daughter, Kate. And so I got kind of interested in her. And I did so because I go to Scripps camp every time I can. It's wonderful. And someone, I don't remember who, asked me, now wasn't Margaret Fowler an Army nurse in World War I? And I said, I only know about Army nurses in World War II, and I don't think so, but I'll find out. It turned out that Margaret Fowler was not an Army nurse, but in 1918, she went to France, to Paris, funded and organized a hotel, we don't know a whole lot about it, for women war workers in France. Her life story is absolutely fascinating. It reads like a novel. And hopefully, and I've had a lot of assistance from Judy Harvey-Sahak and others at Denison in the archives, and continue to work on her story. She really was a remarkable woman, of course, one of our first trustees. And all of this because of a remark at Scripps camp. I can't say enough good things about camp. It's a few days every year to reconnect with the college, to get to live in the old dorms. I was in Kimberly, and then that senior year at Pitzer in what were modern dorms, and so I love the old dorms. And to meet students, or alumni from, and students, but also mostly alumni at camp, from many, many different classes. In fact, it's interesting to me that one of the people I met was Shelley Foote. She's here today, class of 70. We met at camp. I didn't realize for a long time she lived in Ventura, very near me. We've become good friends, and we started a Scripps book club of Scripsies in Ventura County. We meet every other month and read a wonderful book. I think the value of Scripps sisterhood is one of the things that I really wanted to say the most about being an alumni. You've heard a lot about that. I think we feel that in the room today. It remains a very important part of my life during Scripps and after Scripps. And I think it's made me very keenly aware about the contributions and struggles of women and minorities. An interest in that really is a passion that's translated into my first book about Army nurses and in another book about African Americans' relationship in the Civil War with the Union Navy. I don't really think of myself as a trailblazer, but I guess it's true. When you're writing a dissertation at Rutgers about the development of the steam navy, and you're teaching military and naval history at Rutgers for a number of years, I guess you really are doing something rather unusual.